It can often be somewhat nerve-wracking when the boss asks to meet with you, especially if you're not sure why. In this episode, we'll tell you how to prepare for such meetings and succeed in them. Hi, I'm Rick Kendall.
And I'm Fred Ball.
Welcome to Management Mastery. The purpose of these podcasts is to share what each of us has learned about good and bad management in our combined over 40 years of experience, both as managers and executive coaches. During that time, we've coached managers at every level in companies from Fortune 100s to brand new startups in all major businesses, including nonprofits, government, and education. So whether you're just starting in your first management position or are an experienced manager looking to strengthen your management skills, we know our podcast will be valuable to you.
The two types of meetings are ones that the boss calls and ones that you ask for. In the past, we discussed ones that you ask for. So in this episode, we're going to discuss the boss calling the meeting.
Preparation is critical anytime you meet with the boss, but especially when the boss asks for the meeting. The better prepared you are, the more relaxed you will be, and the more professional and on top of things you will come across to your boss. So, most importantly, you want to try to learn as much as you can about what the boss wants to discuss. Now, sometimes you'll know immediately. He'll say something like, "I want to meet with you about the Jones Project," and so on. But sometimes not. You may just get a message that says the boss wants to meet with you. In any case, you want to try to find out as much detail as you can about what the boss wants to discuss. You can ask the boss's assistant or a trusted coworker who may know. And don't stop with just learning a general topic like the Jones Project. Try to find out specifically what about the Jones Project the boss wants to talk about. Does the boss have issues with it or new information? Have they spoken to others about it? If possible, speak to them and learn as much as you can. The purpose is so that you can be prepared with answers to any questions and review where you are on the project or the issue that the boss wants to talk about, and so you feel comfortable with whatever the topic is going to be in the meeting.
Then if the issues are complex, you're going to even spend more time doing any research that you need and thinking through your answers, given your understanding of the possible topics. You also want to keep in mind that when you present to the boss and the boss wants information from you, you want to keep that information short and tight, preferably under 60 seconds, which is about the maximum that anyone can stay focused. So you're going to want to present, then have the boss come back and tell you what they're thinking, and then present some more. You're better off if it's a back and forth kind of conversation. Then your boss may want to talk about other of their key goals, and you need to be able to show that you're on top and in sync with those goals. You need to be prepared to give updates on your progress toward those goals, and obviously we don't have to say you're focused on the boss's key critical goals. You want to stress what your team is doing to accomplish their goals. You want to present in a manner that your boss appreciates. If the boss wants headlines, give them that. If they want detail, then prepare to give them that. In either case, don't be too wordy or detailed. Understand where your progress fits and what you need to do next. And for goodness sakes, if at any point you are surprised, then you may want to pause before you answer.
Yeah, Fred, that's so important. On if you're surprised by something, take a few seconds to gather your thoughts. It seems like an eternity, but to the person on the other side of the desk, it doesn't. It makes you look thoughtful, not stunned.
Okay, good point. If you have, the other thing that you want to do is you want to just have your prioritized list of questions that you may have in case you have time for it. You have to remember that this is the boss's meeting. The boss called this meeting. You may not get to your list of things in this meeting, but you want to be prepared for it in case you do have time and you can get to it.
Yeah, and I think there too, even if you've gotten all the information on what the boss's primary motivation for the meeting is, you want to be prepared for any questions about anything you're working on, because the boss can just say, oh, by the way, what's happening with X? So you want to be as prepared as you can with any meeting with the boss, no matter who calls it. And along those lines, if there are any problems or issues with any project you're working on, be prepared to discuss what you're doing or plan to do to address those issues. And again, as we've said in prior episodes, always ask the boss for suggestions and feedback on the approaches that you're thinking to take.
Absolutely. The boss always wants to, have your respect so that you are willing to ask the boss if there's any thoughts that they have.
Yes. Yeah. And if you think the meeting will involve negative feedback or possible problems with your work, be sure any answers you give are not defensive. Never be defensive. Never blame somebody else for the problem. You want to have a proposal for addressing the problem, so that shows that you're aware of it and you're on top of it and you're thinking about it. Now, the boss may disagree with your proposal. That's fine, but at least it shows you've thought it through a bit. So be prepared if there are any problems with anything going on. Even if that may not be the issue that the boss wanted to talk about initially, you got to be prepared for that to come up. Also, you need to be prepared to briefly update the boss on all the projects you're working on, and focus on anything that you may not have communicated to the boss since you last discussed the project. It may not come up. Again, this is the boss's meeting, but you need to be ready for the boss to say, by the way, what's happening with X? Finally, before the meeting, as we've just said, if your boss surprises you with something, good or bad, it's all right to pause and gather your thoughts before you respond. Now we want to talk about behavior in the meeting. We've been talking about preparing for the meeting. Now, behavior in the meeting that the boss called. First of all, as part of the preparation, you always want to have, as we said, a pad and a pencil, a writing implement with you. Have your notes and thoughts written out for yourself so you know the main things you want to cover if you get the opportunity.
That not having a pad and pencil can cause you big problems. So just make sure that you have them with you. Then when you walk in to greet the boss with a smile, a good handshake, and remember this. Yes, the boss hired you. Yes, the boss wants to see you successful, but this is another opportunity to strengthen the relationship that you have with your boss, and you want to remind yourself of that every time before you go into the meeting. It is the boss's meeting, but still, there might be a time, depending upon the boss, that you can ask them how their summer is going, or they may ask you something that you're doing, and let that time go, relax, enjoy it, and the boss will determine when they want to change the meeting to a business meeting. And when they do turn to a business meeting, understand what the boss wants to talk about. Be smart. Listen listen, listen. Take notes and verify and clarify every point.
I had an experience with a boss who was not a clear communicator, and sometimes it took a real effort to get them to explain what they were trying to say, and it's not always easy because sometimes they can get defensive. They think because you're asking questions, you're challenging them rather than looking for clarity. So depending on your boss and how they communicate and how they interact, you have to be very sensitive to that, but be sure you understand what it is they want. And as Fred said, write it down and play it back. Say, am I right? This is what you want me to do, or this is what you're looking for, and this is when you want it by.
The advice on listening is really critical. The number of times that we have coached managers on that be smart and listen, what happens is that we start to mix our need to say what we think is important to say along with what the boss is saying, and you want to make sure that you stay on the same wavelength as the boss. There's always a way to get back to talk about the things. If you don't have time in this meeting to talk about the things that are on your agenda, then you can reschedule with the boss. And you need to understand and respect the boss's preferred communication style. Some prefer oral, some prefer written. If there's something that you have that that could be a handout or a leave behind to someone who prefers written, that will truly help in your relationship building with your boss.
Right. And again, be sure you understand where your progress on a project fits with the boss's expectations, what you need to do next. Ask questions if you're not clear. We can't emphasize that enough, and have a clear understanding and agreement on what the timelines are, the deliverables are, and write those down and play them back to the boss. We hear a lot about, Fred mentions being distracted and mishearing something. There's all sorts of talk these days about multitasking, and a lot of times people think, well, I can be looking at my notes and listening to the boss. Most current research says no, you can't. And what really happens is your brain switches rapidly back and forth between the two things. And in that switching, you can miss stuff. So you really want to verify that what you have down in your notes is what the boss was actually saying. So you want to be clear about deadlines, clear about timelines, and play them back before the meeting is over. I just want to make sure, is this what you want and when you want it? And in terms of the meeting being over, the boss will determine that. It's the boss's meeting. Let the boss know if you've got another thing that may conflict with a meeting if it goes over, but the boss's meeting is always primary.
I just want to reiterate what you said about writing down what the agreement is, repeat it to the boss, ask any questions that you have, make sure you're on the same page.
Yeah. And I think the overall message for this, just to summarize what we've been talking about, is in any meeting, especially with the boss, especially when the boss calls, the more prepared you can be, the more you know in advance what it's going to be about, the more comfortable you'll be, and the more confident you'll appear to your boss. We hope you have found this podcast useful, and we'll come back again for more management mastery. If you have any comments about this or any of our episodes, or would like to find out more about our other services, including one-on-one coaching and group seminars for managers, visit our website at careercoachclass.com. Thanks for listening.